The time is 1:30. I would like to welcome everyone to the Agriculture and Natural Resources Budget Committee. Today, we are going to be having an informational hearing from the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, from the Director of Environment, a report on the Equus beds. So Kate Gleason, please come to the mic and share your knowledge.
Good afternoon, Chair Mosier and members of the committee. I'm Kate Gleason. I am the Deputy Secretary and Director of Environment for Kansas Department of Health and Environment. And I don't think I have enough material here to fill an hour and a half. I don't know if you have anything else on your agenda, but we'll go through what we have, and I would be happy to answer questions along the way, or you can save them for the end. So the Burton chloride plume, okay, that does work. Just a little bit of the general background to start with. The plume is the result of brine ponds. I'll try not to say that phrase too often because it's tricky. Brine ponds that were used to evaporate fluids that came up as a result of oil and gas drilling. And this mainly occurred from 1931 to 1943. In the mid-40s, they started actually sampling groundwater and realizing that it was seeping into the chlorides were seeping into the groundwater. So the practice was discontinued in the mid-40s. But we have known this has been an issue for a while, obviously, because of that. But we, based on the investigation, estimate 1.9 million tons of salt are in the groundwater in the Equus beds in this area. That's quite a bit. The concentrations range from 200 to 1,400 milligrams per liter through the plume. Some concentrations have been found at much higher numbers than that. Some obviously are lower. There's no enforcement-based drinking water standard for chlorides. It's regulated as what EPA calls a secondary contaminant level, which is a taste and aesthetic issue. Obviously, if your water's too salty, you don't want to drink it, it's probably not great for you either, but the standard that EPA has set for that is 250 milligrams per liter. So you can see the numbers here often exceed that standard. So if folks have domestic wells drilled here or what have you, then that becomes an issue. The threshold at which agriculture becomes difficult is 350 milligrams per liter, so that is also an issue in the plume. So it's affecting the city of Burton, it's affecting irrigators, it's affecting some people with domestic water wells. And the plume, as you'll see from maps later, is close to the Wichita well field that they use for their aquifer storage and recharge project. And it is migrating, I think, a couple feet a year and getting into that area. So next, I'm gonna move to the next slide. This is a map I included mostly to show you geographically where this is in case you're not familiar with Burton. You can see Wichita down there in the bottom right, and then Hutch is in the top left. So Burton, the IGUCA that is, I should have spelled out, they did, Intensive Groundwater Use Control Area. Boundary is in blue, and that pretty much encapsulates the plume in that area, which was established in 1948 by the chief engineer. It's not my agency, but there is a restriction on further appropriations. There's controls on the sort of pumping that's done, and they take care of some sampling and things like that. So that gives you a general idea of where we're talking about in the state. This is a historic map from 1938 to show you some of the brine pond locations. It's kind of hard to see, but the shaded gray area is the IGUCA, and then the little black dots that sort of go from the middle top down to the bottom left were all brine ponds that were used as a result of oil and gas operations. So there were quite a few. And in those brine ponds, the concentrations were very high. They would have like 96,000 milligrams per liter, where we're talking about 250 being the level. Go ahead, sorry.
Thank you. Committee, if it's okay, just ask your questions as you have them instead of wait until the end, because I'll forget and not write down. So how big of an area is this? Are these squares, miles,
Yeah,
square
these are
miles?
sections. The squares are sections, and it's easier to see on this one. It's about 30 square miles, the plume.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
The evaporation ponds were owned by the oil and gas operators, but they are long gone because it wasn't. It was 90 years ago.
Representative Bloom.
Madam Chair, I have a question. So the state got stuck with them now?
Yes, this is what we would call at KDHE an orphan site, meaning there's no viable responsible party.
So it's up to the state to take care of them?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
So these ponds were unlined, so the water seeped right through and went into the groundwater aquifer. This is a map that shows a little bit more of the Burton oil field. These, I think they're hatches, but this looks pretty small, are all the oil and gas well locations. So it was a very active area for oil and gas. On this one, that's like a peach map. There's a black,
The second
Burton.
page.
I've got the page, I just don't know where.
No, you're not on the right page. To just the general, in the state, the general area
Yeah,
in the state.
where is this in the state?
It's east of Hutchinson about, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. Yeah.
And this is just an example, there are others, or is this?
This is a big one. The one big contaminated site that we've been talking about, yeah. There are other contaminated sites around the state, of course, but this is a sort of unique situation. Burton is right smack in the middle of the plume, as you've seen from the maps. They have 861 people, or they did in 2020. They have a public water supply, of course. That well, their public water supply well was south of the town, and it did start to get elevated chlorides. So I'm forgetting the year, but they did move that well 2 miles north of town, and those results are good. Of course, they've kept the south well in case of emergency, but it does still have elevated chlorides, so there's, limited use for that. The school district, which is about the same size, a little bit bigger than the plume, is about 1,300 people, so that gives you an idea of how many people are actually in the footprint of the well, or the plume, sorry. And as we talked about when we had our budget hearing, there are 62 domestic wells, and at least 62, right? Chief Engineer Lewis corrected me after. We only have the recorded domestic wells. They're not all recorded, so we just know there are 62 recorded domestic wells, probably more, and 166 irrigation points of diversion. The bottom bullet here, you'll see some numbers about the effect on irrigation. We did ask K-State's Water Institute a few months ago. We saw this issue coming, and we thought it would be good to know about the economic impact of this plume, right? They haven't had a lot of time to look at it, but the preliminary report that we've seen and is not finalized yet does show that irrigating with this water basically makes the fields invaluable, and so they have to move to dryland farming or grazing, something like that. So we're gathering some more data on that, and we think it's valuable to know the economic impact. Yes, Chair Mosier.
So I have another question. Who owns the land that this plume is on? I mean, but those people are not responsible for cleaning it up, or it was the oil company that did the damage and they're gone, and so that's why the state has to clean it up?
Yes, the land is owned by all sorts of folks, right? There's some areas that are residential in Burton. There's some areas that are ag land and have lower densities of residents. The principle in Kansas on contamination has always been polluter pays and innocent landowners do not pay. And that's why we as an agency haven't been talking about asking them to chip in. That's not what our statutes or regs say, so. Okay, in 2020, through the Water Office, but the interested agencies commissioned a remedial investigation. That investigation showed a lot of chloride contamination. So I was just gonna walk you through a little bit. This is really technical, but just to give you a sense of the plume. This is the middle aquifer zone, which is 75 to 150 feet deep. You'll see, does this have a pointer? It doesn't show, does it? Okay, so Burton is right in the middle north where it says P31A, if you can find it. I don't know, I'm sorry if you can't. And their public water supply well is the one directly north of that. That's right on the red and orange dotted line. So that shows you where they had to move their well to. It's fairly far away. But then you'll see the concentrations of chlorides through the middle aquifer sometimes exceed 1,200, 1,300. There's pockets of contamination all over, which I'm just showing you again because it gives you an idea when we get to talking about the remedial strategies of what those look like. The upper aquifer zone also has very high contamination. This would be the aquifer zone that's closest to the surface, 0 to 75 feet deep. The salts, the chloride water seeped in, right? And so it started in the upper aquifer, but because it's heavy and denser than water, it's been sinking through. So it started here in the upper aquifer. You'll see these high concentrations, but then it goes down to the middle aquifer zone. It's seeping through there because the plume is so old. And then we'll go down next to the lower aquifer zone. There's concentrations down here, and it shows the plume, some of the movement as it sinks down. It's sort of moving to the east, so toward the Wichita well field. Does anyone have any questions about that? I know that's a lot of, we look at maps like this all day at KDG, but I understand they can be difficult to read.
So the lower aquifer zone is 150 feet down to how far?
I believe there's water down to about 285 feet.
I was going to ask about the upper, but I see it.
Okay. So in 2024, we received money through the state water plan to perform a feasibility study to look at remedial alternatives. So they've taken the information from the remedial investigation and plugged it into some of our normal strategies for addressing contamination. This obviously is such a large plume that we've looked at a lot of strategies and tried to put some money on, some ideas to how the money could be most effectively spent. So the first one you'll see here is you sometimes pump the water out of the aquifer and then send it down a deep well into what we call extinction, right? It would go down so deep you'd never get it back. Now we've crossed that one off because this is a lot of water, and pumping it down that deep, you lose it all, and it just is not really feasible for this scope of a plume. Evaporation is another strategy they looked at, pumping it back out and putting it in lined ponds instead of unlined so it wouldn't seep back in, but then evaporating the water out, you're left with the salt and you can dispose of that. The scale that you would need for that is also excessive for it's not feasible. You need like 500 acres, they calculated, to do that with this level of contamination and this much contaminated aquifer. The third one we looked at is a fairly common method of treatment, reverse osmosis. This is extremely expensive. For those of you who are familiar with the work that's gone on in other cities to do reverse osmosis for contaminated plumes, because of the scale of this and the cost of reverse osmosis, we have sort of turned away from this as an option. It was estimated, 2 years ago to be up to $56 million. So we don't think that's really a viable option for addressing this plume. So we turned to this idea that we discussed earlier, blending it with Wichita's drinking water supply. So we would dilute the high chloride water with what Wichita currently has, and we'll talk more about that later in the logistics of it. It would still be below all of the thresholds for taste and odor, and be put to a beneficial use, essentially. So this is the reverse osmosis facility in Hutchinson. It also shows a diagram of a deep well injection in case you're curious about that. But the O&M for the reverse osmosis system is really high. It would be at least $1.5 million a year. We estimate over 20 years that would cost $17.2 million. Whereas with the blending, we think that the ongoing O&M is $273,000 a year, and we have talked to Wichita because they would be getting some water out of the deal that they would absorb those costs themselves, and that would save us money as far as financing the project. So this is a map of the blending proposed blending project, you'll see where there are high concentrations, there are these purple hatched lines, we would say down gradient, where we expect the plume to move into. And they would be captured there, site A, site B, site C, and then piped to the Wichita well field, which if you'll see in that map on the right, there are blue lines. Those are existing Wichita infrastructure in the Wichita well field. So we're talking about a mile or two to get over, maybe farther. Sometimes the closest pipe's not big enough, so I think it might be a few miles. But we're talking about moving these through pumping them out and connecting all these sites together, moving them to the Wichita well field. And we have estimates on we could start with site A, and pay for that, and then move on to the other sites as we go. We estimate that with this plan, that Wichita would get about 2.5 million gallons a day. Is that right? Or a year? Well, that's what it says on my notes. So that is those are all of my slides. And if there are any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Kate. Representative Bloom, then Ranking Carlin, then Representative White. So this has spurred some interest.
Thank you, Chair. It says here, hi again, it says here the standard for taste is 250 milligrams per liter. And you can drink that.
Yes.
But what would that do to your body?
It's safe to drink. So milligrams
could
per
you drink
liter
it
is
over
like parts per million. All water has some naturally occurring chlorides in it, right? Right now, Wichita already has 130 milligrams per liter. So all of us are, well, I don't know all your water sources, but you're all likely drinking some chlorides in your water now. It's naturally occurring in most water sources.
I was wondering if you drank that continually, if it would make you sick. I mean, would it build up or would your body get rid of it or?
If your body should get rid of it, yes. If there were a health issue, there would be what we would call a primary drinking water standard, and then they would regulate that. But at the standard that is taste and odor, folks won't drink that. So they didn't ever set a standard for water being too salty based on health. Does that make sense?
Parts per million, I mean, below 350, can they get along with? I mean, could you use?
I'm sorry?
Well, how low would you have to go? If the taste is 250 milligrams per liter, how far would you have to go that it wouldn't bother your body? I mean, make you sick and after like a year of drinking that stuff?
No, I don't believe you would ever get sick
So
from
it
that.
would never make you sick at that level?
No.
But most of your levels are way over that.
In the plume, but we would be blending it. This would be a small stream into Wichita's other water supplies. They would get their other water from the Equus beds and from Lake Cheney. And so it would be, they would do the math on what they think their customers would drink and how much they could blend in without it being a problem, right? If they get to 225 and their customers say, this is too salty, it can be reconfigured and dialed back. That's.
It looked like there was hundreds of little old evaporation ponds. Are they never going to get down to the aquifer then? You don't worry about the littler ponds?
Which ponds? I'm sorry?
Evaporation ponds, it showed on here, there's a whole bunch of spots, and they're all over, not just the big ones.
Evaporation ponds have been removed and are no longer.
So there's
Yeah.
no more salt is leaching out of them then?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Ranking Carlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure that I ever took those words seriously. If I ever heard them, the Burton chloride bloom, I don't think I ever heard of it. But it sounds like the water I grew up with on my farm. We had a well that we used for basically bathing. It's the only thing that we could actually do with that water, toilet and bathing. It was very, very horrible taste. It was sulfur. We thought, my family used the word sulfur water. Is that what this is? And it was near some oil fields. So it comes from.
Oil and gas production.
It comes from the pumping of the water into the oil well or whatever. Some of the actions taken to get oil out. Is that what causes it?
Yes. Okay. The Geology in near
Injection.
Hutchinson is very salty, right? So anything that comes out of the ground is going to have salt in it. So it's salt that was not needed.
Is it, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm trying to understand where it comes from, the source of it. And I apologize, I missed it a little bit, but, so Hutchinson has the the salt mines.
Correct.
Is it related to the salt mines?
The ground is salty, like it is in Hutchinson with the salt mines, yes. But is the contamination related? No, it's not related to the salt mines. It's related to oil and gas production.
Is it more prominent there because there's salt in the area? Or is it just always, if my well was in southeast Kansas, which it was, and we had, a half a mile away, we had some oil wells were pumping. So the creation of those oil wells might have caused our water, and there's no salt mines around.
There are other areas in the state where the drinking water has been affected by oil and gas production, and it can be other contaminants based on the geology of the area,
And-
the geography.
Yeah, I'm sure you wouldn't know exactly, but I guess that's what kind of water I was raised with. 4 of us out of the 5 kids had cancer. So I would be real interested in your theory there to see, I'd like to see some more studies after this. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Representative White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Kate. Great presentation. Kind of wondering, is there still oil and gas production in that area?
I believe it has significantly died down in that area, yeah, but there is probably some.
And that kind of bouncing off her questions, what is and was the pay zone? How deep was those oil wells?
So I couldn't answer that question today. How deep they were in the 1930s?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that question.
And those companies are long gone.
Yes.
Doesn't the oil and gas industry have like a remedial super fund?
There is a fund that oil and gas producers pay into in KCC. It is not robust enough to bear the cost of this type of remedial project.
Well, early on in my career in Topeka, I was told that those remedial funds are gone. And then last year I saw, whoa, here, they were used for something. They magically reappeared. So I'm going to get to the bottom of that. But thank you.
Representative Roth.
What is the impact of this plume on wildlife? You know, like rabbits, ducks, geese,
Yeah.
foxes, coyotes.
I don't think, because it's a groundwater plume, it's underground, I can't think of a exposure pathway to which wildlife would be affected.
And animals or mammals that are below ground, that burrow below ground, and the water plume's deep enough that it doesn't affect a 12-foot hole in the.
Yeah, it's deeper than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for being here, Kate. I think there's some misunderstanding how this happened, and I'm not sure I can paraphrase you, but I can help you maybe.
That'd be great.
When we drill for gas and oil today, all over Kansas, salt water comes up with gas and oil.
Right.
It always has, and most generally always will, especially when you lose the pressure, you get even more salt water. So when that comes up with the gas in the 1930s, they separated the salt water off the gas in the 1930s and put it into ponds, right? So they were most likely drilling for gas 1,500, 2,000 feet to as much as 4,000 or 5,000 feet, oil and gas. It was deep. And then they separated this water into these ponds, and this water in these ponds leached back down to the groundwater, which is only 200 to 500 feet deep, right?
Yeah, I think we're It's shallower than that here, but yeah, generally.
In southwest Kansas, we still pull a lot of salt water off our gas, but we dispose of it. We have permits to dispose of that in deep wells that go past our drinking water on back down to the field of a couple thousand feet. But it's still going on today, but this is a result of bad gas companies operating in the 1930s.
Yes. I guess I was remiss if I didn't say that the housekeeping practices and the best management practices for oil and gas now, this isn't a problem. This was the accepted practice in the 1930s until they realized fairly quickly after that it was not a great idea. So.
Any other questions? Representative Rogers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, this has been something that's been there for a long, long time. We've gone through many things that happened, with our grandparents did or whatever. And so here we are. This is one that has been on the radar, I think, of a lot of people for a long time. It doesn't catch the news or something, or maybe the right or wrong person. I guess explain, because there's been a lot of discussion for a while about the role of Wichita as Wichita looks for more water. So we as the state will give them the water, and then their cost is to go through the treatment center, is that right? I mean, are they getting the raw water? Are we doing some RO work before it goes in those pipelines? I'm not completely familiar with how that works. It's been a while since I was on the old water committee that we talked a little bit about that. So do you have an idea? If not, that's fine. I'm just kind of curious of, if the city would come back and say, we might need, as we look at the future of water fund planning, would they need some for that? Because we want to make sure that folks, Wichita have plenty of good, clean, drinkable water. So, plus I think it makes you shorter. No, I'm just kidding. I quit growing at 14, up anyway. So, anyway.
Great questions. The water would be delivered raw to the city of Wichita, right? It's not as much water as Wichita is looking for in things like their direct potable reuse scheme. So, is it delivering enough water to Wichita to solve their water use problems? No, but for the amount of water it is, they've agreed to manage the project, which would save us up to $1.5 million on this, and take on the O&M costs. So once we connect it to Wichita, then they're assuming those costs. I mean, we've informally discussed this, right? We don't have the funding, and we're not committing to anything, but Wichita has verbally said they would do this.
Madam Chair, did I hear you right, that the city of Wichita would take over the project, period?
They would they wouldn't fund the project, but they would take it over once it was completed. And they would manage the construction of the project.
Really?
Yes.
And the state's role would be what then? Just for possible?
We would have the funding, so we would bid out the project and make sure it gets funded. I mean, that would be our role, is putting
It would
together
still
a
be the state's
funding package.
responsibility. I just want to make sure I understand that I understand the agreement's not been reached, but it may be in principle, but again, the city would take over management, so it would be a management agreement, right?
Yes, the city would manage the project while the construction is ongoing, and then once construction is complete, the infrastructure would go to the city and it would be theirs to maintain.
Okay.
Does that?
Very good.
clear it up?
That's a little clearer. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I have a question about Wichita. I was going to say, how does Wichita feel about this, bringing this salty water in and,
Yeah.
are they in that much of a need for water that they're willing to pay for the filtering and whatever else it needs to make it usable?
Wichita, they're not chomping at the bit pushing this project, right, to take on someone else's contaminated water. But as good partners to the city and to GMD2, they've agreed that, if this project gets funding, they're interested in serious discussions about, getting this all in place. So it's again, a small chunk for them of the water they're looking for, but it would help supplement their water supply. So there is already treatment available right there, right in the well field. There's both the active treatment that they do for their ASR project, and there was a treatment facility they built for a pilot of that. There's been conversations about using that facility for this, so those are all options. So we have had conversations with them about this. They understand it would be important to blend at the right rate for this not to affect their customers. Obviously, that would be a priority for them. It would only be, a 20th of what their active daily water supply use is. So when you're talking about blending at that fraction, you're not really affecting their overall chloride number that dramatically, if that makes sense.
Ranking Carlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So is this going to be a long-term supply of water, or will it wear out? And then my other question is, was their facility one of these that you discussed with us, the thing they've already built to treat the water?
This is a better question for Chief Engineer Lewis on how the water rights would work. Typically, when we do remediation projects, folks get those water rights. Cities have reused water before and they get those water rights. I think they maintain them even after the project is done. Of course, this would take years and years, probably decades, to actually decrease the plume to the point where we said we don't need to treat it anymore. But I think it's likely Wichita would keep the water rights in the long term.
I guess the question I was trying to say there is this a long-term water supply that can be cleaned up and then used? That's what you said, and then they could continue to use good water cleaner water as it comes. But the water supply itself, is it continual throughout time?
That's my understanding of how it works.
Okay, thank you. And what kind of treatment then?
The treatment that they use at the aquifer storage and recharge facility is, oh gosh, does anyone want to answer that question? It's okay, I just wondered if it was one of the things. It's very high tech. They treat the water to all of the federal cleanup standards there at that facility, and that's just so they can re-inject it in the ground and use water, right? They have a very high-tech facility there. I don't know if you've been to it, but it's very interesting if you ever get the chance.
Any other questions? Representative Roth.
Is USGS doing anything with the plume and with water for Wichita, then in cooperation with Wichita or in conjunction with Wichita?
Not that I'm aware of on this plume specifically. Are they working with Wichita on any water supply topics? I don't think I could answer that question.
I think they've got something going on with that, just FYI. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions for Ms. Gleason? Representative Curtis, you don't have one?
No, I don't really have a question, but I was just wondering if Representative Long has been watching Landman, because I learned some of the things that he just repeated on watching Landman about gas and oil.
I have a feeling he might be involved in some of this out there.
Yeah, 40 years of it.
Yeah.
So I did have one quick question, Kate. We've talked about basically, I wonder if you guys know how much money has gone into the research and development of the desalinization process in America. I mean, the Earth's covered by 2/3 with salt water. And I know they've been trying to work on desalinization methods for the past 50 years. If we could ever get that done, no one would ever be short of water again in the history of the world. So I don't know how much research is going on across the country. Do you have any idea?
I think California is very active in that area. Of course, as a landlocked state, we haven't kept that at the tip of our, the top of our mind. But California has done a lot of research into that, and I don't know whether they've actually put a desalinization plant in, but there's been a lot of conversation about, I think there is one in San Diego. So that technology is very expensive, is my understanding.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Kate. Thank you to the Department of Health and Environment for enlightening us on this. I know it's been talked about the last few years, and I think that this has been great for the committee to learn more, to share with other legislators. It was like a $9.9 million ask to clean the whole thing up, right?
The entire blending project is estimated about $19.3 million. Like I said, there are phases of that we could phase out. And so the funding suggestion, 9.9, was originally from the Water Authority, and that was to do it in a 2-year chunk. And if we had the first year of funding at 9.9 million, then we would have gone to GMD2 and City of Wichita and really hammered out numbers. And KCC also is a partner in this. So we would have gotten a more precise number for the second year. It might have been lower, hopefully. That was the idea.
So you were going to ask other entities to take part in this cleanup process?
Yes.
Sounds like a smart thing to do. Any other comments, questions? Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. I do want to speak for a minute about the substitute motion of the substitute motion that happened the other day. This morning, Speaker Pro Tem Carpenter was giving a presentation about committee rules, and in the Ag Budget Committee, the rules say a substitute motion is in order, but no additional substitute motions shall be in order until the prior substitute motion is disposed of. So if we have a motion on the floor and someone makes a substitute motion, we're going to deal with the substitute motion first. And then if somebody wants to make a second substitute motion, they can do that, and we can do that into perpetuity. But we'll eventually get back to the main motion. But we're not stacking substitutes on substitutes in this budget committee. Every committee rules can be somewhat different. This was what was handed to me 2 years ago, and I have not made any changes. So you should all have a copy of this, by the way. Okay, that concludes our business for today. I do want to announce that tomorrow, February 5th, we're going to have a water task force update by Senator Kenny Titus. He is co-chair of the Water Program Task Force, and I believe you're co-chair. Oh, Jim, yeah, Representative Minix is the House side co-chair. You're on the committee, though. Yes, so they've been meeting regularly throughout all of last year at different points across the state to get a better grasp on water quality, quantity, and needs in all the different parts of the state. And so Senator Titus will be updating us on where that is. And I believe that final report is due in January of 27. Is that correct? Okay. And then looking ahead to next week, on Monday, February 9th, we're going to have a grasslands discussion with Secretary Mike Beam from the Kansas Department of Agriculture. So that promises to be very interesting with regard to the new FTE that this committee put in place and appropriations approved of a grassland lead. And then on Tuesday, February 10th, the Musil Center for Sustainable Wheat Production, which we also talked about in the ag budget. We're going to have a report on that, a more in-depth look at what will go on, with that. And then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, February 11th, the Kansas Department of Agriculture will again present on the food safety inspectors. So that's, and that Monday, we will meet at 2 o'clock instead of 1:30, because the secretary is somewhere else in the building at 1:30 and should be back by 2 o'clock. And I will, if I remember, I'll have to make a big note, but I'll go down to the well and announce that on Monday. So 2 o'clock, February 9th in this room. So anything else to come before the committee today? I don't eat jerky. We are adjourned.